I was sitting at my desk, finishing up some project reports when my phone buzzed. It was a text from my wife. I figured it was about dinner or something normal. What I saw instead made me read it twice. Your HR manager and I are friends now. She told me about your performance review. You're on thin ice, lol. I stared at the screen. My first thought was simple. How does she know anything about my performance review? That information is confidential. Company policy is crystal clear on this. Nobody outside the department should have access to that, especially not someone's spouse. My second thought was darker. She thinks this is funny. I kept my response short. Thanks for the information. She probably expected me to call her immediately, angry, or defensive. That's what the old me would have done. But I've learned something over the years. When someone hands you evidence of their own misconduct, you don't waste it on an argument. You use it. I screenshot the message. Then I forwarded it to my personal email. Then I saved it in 3 different places. This wasn't just my wife being nosy. This was a serious breach of professional ethics, and someone at my company had just violated confidentiality protocols. Let me back up a bit. My wife and I had been having problems for a while. Nothing dramatic, just a slow drift. She'd been spending more time with her friends, going out more often, coming home later. I worked long hours in operations management for a logistics company. Nothing glamorous, but it paid the bills and had decent benefits. Lately, though, she'd been making comments. Little digs about my job, about how I should be further along in my career by now, about how her friends' husbands made more money. I ignored most of it. But this was different. She didn't just cross a line. She bragged about it. I looked at the message again. The HR manager's name is Patricia Brennan. I'd met her a handful of times. Professional, by the book, never gave me any reason to think she'd discuss employee information with outsiders. So either my wife was lying or something very wrong had happened. I thought about confronting Patricia directly, but that seemed like a bad move. If she actually did leak confidential information, going to her first would just give her time to cover it up or create some excuse. No, this needed to go higher. I opened my company directory and found the contact for corporate ethics and legal. I'd never used it before, but every employee handbook mentions it. It's there for situations exactly like this. Violations of company policy, ethical concerns, confidentiality breaches. I started typing an email. I kept it factual, professional, and attached the screenshot. I am writing to report a potential breach of confidentiality regarding my employment records. This afternoon, I received a text message from my spouse indicating that she has obtained information about my performance review from our HR manager, Patricia Brennan. This information is confidential and should not have been shared with any third party. I have attached documentation of this communication. I request a formal investigation into how this information was accessed and disclosed. Please advise on next steps. I read it 3 times before hitting send. My hand hovered over the button for a second. Once I did this, there was no going back. This wasn't just about work anymore. This was about my marriage too. I hit send. Within 20 minutes, I got an automated response confirming receipt. Then, 10 minutes after that, an actual human response from someone in legal named Howard Klein. He thanked me for bringing this to their attention and said someone would contact me first thing tomorrow morning to discuss the matter further. I put my phone away and tried to focus on work, but my mind kept wandering. Why would my wife do this? What was she trying to accomplish? Was she trying to intimidate me, control me, or just prove she had some kind of power? And more importantly, how did she convince Patricia Brennan to violate company policy? That night at home was tense. She asked me about my day like nothing had happened. I gave her generic answers. She seemed pleased with herself, like she'd won something. I didn't bring up the text. I didn't give her any indication that I'd done anything about it. Let her think she got away with it. Because tomorrow, everything was going to change. The next morning, I got to the office early. At 8:30 sharp, my phone rang. It was Howard Klein from legal. Good morning. I've reviewed your complaint from yesterday. This is a serious matter. Can you come to the conference room on the 5th floor at 10? We'll need to discuss this in detail. I'll be there, I said. Bring any additional documentation you have. Text messages, emails, anything that might be relevant. I showed up 15 minutes early. Howard was already there, along with someone from corporate ethics named Lillian Foster. They were both in their 40s, sharp, professional. The kind of people who don't waste time. Howard got straight to it. Walk us through exactly what happened. I showed them the text message. I explained that I'd never discussed my performance review with my wife. I pointed out that the information she referenced could only have come from someone with access to confidential employee records. Lillian took notes. Has your wife ever met Patricia Brennan before? Not that I know of. I've barely interacted with Patricia myself. Maybe 3 or 4 times total since she started 8 months ago. Howard leaned back. Here's what concerns me. Your wife specifically mentioned being friends with the HR manager. That suggests ongoing communication, not a one-time slip. If Patricia shared this information voluntarily, that's a termination-level offense. If your wife obtained it through coercion or deception, that's potentially even worse. There's something else, I said. My wife has been making comments lately about my career, about how I should be making more money, about how I'm not ambitious enough. This feels like it might be part of a pattern. Lillian looked up from her notes. Has she ever threatened to interfere with your employment? Not directly, but the tone of that text message, the way she said I'm on thin ice and laughed about it, that feels like a threat to me. Howard nodded. We're going to open a formal investigation. We'll be interviewing Patricia Brennan today. We may need to speak with you again as this progresses. In the meantime, do not discuss this matter with anyone in the office, including Patricia. Let us handle it. I left that meeting feeling like I'd done the right thing. But I also felt something else. A strange calm. For months, my wife had been pushing boundaries, testing limits, making me feel like I was never good enough. Now she'd crossed a line she couldn't uncross. That afternoon, I noticed Patricia wasn't at her desk. Word travels fast in an office, even when people try to keep things quiet. By lunch, a few people were whispering about HR being in meetings all morning. At home that night, my wife was in a good mood. She'd been shopping. New clothes, expensive bags on the counter. She talked about her day, about lunch with friends, about some drama in her social circle. She didn't mention the text. She didn't ask about my day. I made dinner. We ate in near silence. She scrolled through her phone. I thought about everything that had happened. The investigation was just starting, but I already knew how this would end. Because here's the thing about manipulation. It works right up until it doesn't. And when it stops working, the person doing the manipulating never sees it coming. The next day, Howard called me again. We need you to come back in. Some new information has come to light. When I got to the conference room, the atmosphere had shifted. Howard and Lillian were there, but now there was someone else. A woman I didn't recognize. She introduced herself as Denise Shepard from the company's legal department. We've completed our initial interview with Patricia Brennan, Howard said. And what she told us changes the nature of this situation significantly. Lillian slid a folder across the table. Your wife didn't just befriend Patricia. She approached her with very specific intentions. Patricia claims your wife made statements that could be interpreted as threats. I opened the folder. Inside were printed text messages between my wife and Patricia. Messages I'd never seen. Messages that made my blood run cold. My wife had been planning this for weeks. I read through the messages slowly, each one worse than the last. The first few were friendly enough. My wife had contacted Patricia on social media, claiming she wanted to connect with people in my professional circle. She mentioned being concerned about our marriage, about wanting to understand my work stress better. Then the tone shifted. I know he's been having issues at work. It would be helpful for me to know what's being said about him in performance reviews, just so I can support him at home. Patricia had declined. Professional boundaries, she'd said. Company policy. That's when my wife changed tactics. I understand you have to be careful, but I'd hate for there to be any misunderstandings. You know how things can look when taken out of context. Like that situation with the expense reports last month. I looked up. What situation with expense reports? Howard leaned forward. That's what we asked Patricia. Turns out, there was no situation. Your wife made it up. But the implication was clear. She was suggesting she had information that could create problems for Patricia if she didn't cooperate. Denise added, that's extortion, or at minimum, coercion through false pretenses. I kept reading. The messages continued over 3 weeks. My wife kept pressing. She'd mentioned seeing Patricia's car in certain places, knowing details about her schedule, making comments that showed she'd been watching or researching her. Finally, Patricia cracked. She sent my wife a brief summary of my last performance review. Nothing detailed, just general talking points. Average performance, meeting expectations, no major concerns. That's what my wife had used to send me that text. To tell me I was on thin ice. She'd taken normal feedback and weaponized it. Why would she do this? I asked, though part of me already knew. Lillian closed her notebook. We asked Patricia the same thing. She said your wife told her she was trying to gather evidence for a divorce, that she needed to prove you were failing professionally to strengthen her case for alimony and asset division. There it was, the genuine reason behind everything. She wasn't trying to help me. She wasn't even trying to hurt me out of anger. She was building a case. She wanted to paint me as incompetent, as someone struggling in his career, as someone who couldn't provide. And she tried to manipulate my own HR department to help her do it. Howard spoke carefully. This puts us in a difficult position. Patricia violated company policy by sharing your information. That's clear grounds for termination. But she did so under duress, with what she believed were threats against her own employment. What happens now? I asked. We're suspending Patricia pending further investigation. As for your wife, she's not our employee, so we can't take direct action against her. But we can certainly document this for any legal proceedings you choose to pursue. And we're obligated to report the attempted extortion to our legal team. Denise pulled out another document. We're also recommending you speak with an attorney about your marriage. What your wife did here demonstrates a pattern of manipulative behavior and potential fraud. Those text messages, the coercion, the false statements about Patricia, all of that could be relevant in divorce proceedings. I left that meeting with copies of everything. The messages, the statements, the timeline of events. I sat in my car for 20 minutes, just processing it all. I'd known things were bad. I'd known she was unhappy. But this was calculated. This was planned. She hadn't acted out of emotion or frustration. She'd built a strategy to destroy my professional reputation so she could profit from divorcing me. That evening, I stopped at a law office on my way home. The attorney, a guy named Russell Tate, listened to everything. He looked through the documents I'd brought. This is textbook financial abuse and manipulation, he said. She was attempting to create false evidence of career instability. If she'd succeeded, she could have argued you were a poor provider, that she'd been forced to endure financial hardship, that she deserved a larger share of assets and ongoing support. Can we use this in a divorce? Absolutely. This demonstrates malicious intent. It shows she was planning to end the marriage while actively trying to sabotage your earning potential. That's going to factor heavily into any settlement negotiations. I hired him on the spot. When I got home that night, my wife was watching television. She looked up when I walked in. "You're late," she said. "Had some things to take care of. Work things." Something like that. She went back to her show. I went to the bedroom and started looking through our financial documents. Bank statements, credit card bills, joint accounts. I needed to know exactly what we had and where it all was. Because this wasn't just about her trying to control my career anymore. This was about protecting myself from someone who'd proven she was willing to lie, manipulate, and destroy to get what she wanted. And I wasn't going to let that happen. The investigation at work moved faster than I expected. By the end of the week, Howard called me into another meeting. Patricia Brennan had been terminated. The evidence was overwhelming. She'd violated confidentiality protocols, shared protected employee information, and failed to report what she clearly understood was coercion. The company had no choice. But that wasn't why Howard wanted to see me. During our extended interviews with Patricia, more information came out, he said. Your wife contacted her multiple times beyond what we initially discovered. And the things she said paint a very concerning picture. He showed me additional messages. Ones Patricia had initially been too embarrassed to share. In one exchange, my wife had written, "He thinks he's doing fine, but we both know he's barely hanging on. Someone needs to put him in his place before he embarrasses himself further. I'm trying to help him see that he's not as capable as he thinks he is." Another message. When this all comes out, people need to understand that I stood by him as long as I could. But a woman can only take so much failure. I felt sick reading them. Howard continued. Patricia told us your wife also asked her to document any mistakes you made, any complaints from colleagues, anything that could be used to show declining performance. Patricia refused that request, which is the only reason she wasn't terminated sooner. She was trying to build a fake paper trail, I said. Exactly. And when Patricia wouldn't help with that, your wife apparently decided to go with what she had. That's why she sent you that text. She wanted you to think your job was in jeopardy, that you were failing, that she was the one who had to rescue you from yourself. Lillian added, "We've also discovered your wife contacted 2 of your colleagues on LinkedIn. She introduced herself, tried to start conversations about workplace culture, asked leading questions about team dynamics. We think she was fishing for information she could use. My colleagues. She'd gone after my colleagues. Who? I asked. Bryce Chandler and Nina Walsh. Both declined to engage beyond basic pleasantries. They thought it was odd but didn't report it because technically she didn't do anything wrong. I knew Bryce and Nina. Good people. Solid workers. The idea that my wife had tried to manipulate them too made me angry in a way I hadn't felt before. Denise spoke up. There's one more thing. We pulled security footage from the parking garage. Your wife was here, at this building, twice in the past month. She never came inside, but she was clearly watching. Timing suggests she was tracking when Patricia arrived and left. That's stalking, I said. It's certainly harassment, and it establishes a pattern of obsessive behavior focused on undermining your employment. When I got home that evening, I found my wife in the kitchen. She was making dinner, humming to herself. Like everything was normal. We need to talk, I said. She turned around, smiled. About what? Patricia Brennan was fired today. The smile disappeared. For just a second, I saw something in her eyes. Fear, maybe. Or calculation. Who's Patricia Brennan? She asked. The HR manager you've been friends with. The one who told you about my performance review. The one you threatened. I don't know what you're talking about. I pulled out my phone, showed her the screenshot of her text. This. Remember this. She stared at it. That was just a joke. I was messing with you. No, it wasn't. The company investigated. They have all the messages between you and Patricia. They know what you did. They know you tried to coerce her into giving you confidential information. They know you made false claims about expense reports. They know you stalked her in the parking garage. Her face changed. The mask dropped. You reported me to your company? Are you serious? You tried to sabotage my career. You threatened someone at my workplace. What did you think would happen? I was trying to help you. You're too proud to see that you're struggling. So I had to find out myself what was going on. By extorting my HR manager? By trying to build a fake case that I'm failing at my job? She stepped back. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. You wanted evidence for a divorce. You wanted to make it look like I was incompetent so you could take more in the settlement. Patricia told them everything, including the part where you said you needed proof I was a failure. The silence that followed was heavy. She tried a different approach. Tears started forming. I'm sorry. I made mistakes. I was scared about our future. I just wanted to know what was happening. Can't we work through this? No, I said. We can't. I've already contacted a divorce attorney. You'll be served papers next week. The tears stopped immediately. You can't do that. I already did. And everything you've done, all those messages, the coercion, the stalking, all of it is going to be part of the divorce filing. You try to destroy my reputation and my career. That has consequences. She grabbed her phone, started typing furiously, probably texting her friends, her family, trying to get ahead of the narrative, trying to spin this as me being unreasonable. But it didn't matter anymore. I had documentation. I had witnesses. I had evidence of her systematic attempt to manipulate and control. She looked up from her phone. Everyone's going to know you're the one who gave up on this marriage. No, I said calmly. Everyone's going to know you tried to sabotage your husband's career for money. There's a difference. I walked to the bedroom and closed the door. I could hear her on the phone in the living room, her voice rising and falling as she told her version of events to whoever would listen. Let her talk. The truth was documented, time-stamped, and backed up in multiple locations. And the truth was going to cost her everything. The next few days were chaos. My wife tried everything. She went from angry to apologetic to victimized, cycling through emotions like she was reading from a script. None of it worked. Russell Tate, my attorney, moved quickly. We filed for divorce on grounds of irreconcilable differences, but attached was a comprehensive documentation of her attempts to interfere with my employment. Every message, every timeline, every witness statement from the company investigation. This is leverage, Russell explained. She can't claim financial hardship or ask for excessive support when we can prove she actively tried to sabotage your income. The court won't look favorably on that. My wife hired her own attorney, some guy named Gregory Walsh who had a reputation for being aggressive. He sent Russell a letter demanding I withdraw the divorce petition and agree to marriage counseling. Russell laughed when he read it. They have nothing. This is posturing. At work, things improved dramatically. The company wanted to make things right. My direct supervisor, Kenneth Park, called me into his office. We owe you an apology, he said. What happened with Patricia should never have occurred. We've implemented new protocols to prevent this kind of breach in the future. And I want you to know that your performance has always been solid. Whatever your wife told you, whatever she tried to make you believe, none of it was accurate. I appreciate that, I said. There's something else. We have an opening for a senior operations coordinator position. Better pay, more responsibility. I'd like you to apply for it. After everything you've been through, you've handled yourself with professionalism. That matters to us. I applied that afternoon. 2 weeks later, I got the job. 15% raise, better benefits, a team of my own to manage. My wife found out through social media. One of my colleagues posted congratulations, and apparently someone in her friend group saw it. She called me at work, furious. You got promoted? How did you get promoted? By doing my job well. Why are you surprised? Because you were supposed to be struggling. That's what Patricia said. Patricia lied to you. Or you lied to yourself. Either way, turns out I'm doing just fine. She hung up. 20 minutes later, her attorney called Russell. They wanted to negotiate the divorce terms. The offer was insulting. She wanted half of everything, including my retirement accounts, plus ongoing alimony for 5 years. In exchange, she'd agree to an uncontested divorce. Russell sent back a counteroffer. 50-50 split of assets acquired during the marriage. No alimony, given her employment history and her documented attempts to commit fraud. We also included a clause that she would be responsible for any legal fees if she contested and lost. Her attorney tried to negotiate. Russell held firm. Then something interesting happened. Word got out about what my wife had done. Not from me. I never discussed it outside of legal proceedings. But Patricia Brennan, angry about losing her job, apparently started talking. She told friends. Those friends told other people. Small town, tight professional circles. My wife's reputation started crumbling. Her employer, a marketing firm downtown, called her in for a meeting. Someone had sent them an anonymous email outlining the situation. They were concerned about her judgment, her ethics, her tendency toward manipulation. She wasn't fired, but she was put on a performance improvement plan, essentially probation. Her friends started distancing themselves. Nobody wants to be associated with someone who got caught trying to sabotage their spouse's career. It made people wonder what else she was capable of. She showed up at the house one evening, crying. Genuine tears this time, not the manipulative kind. Everything's falling apart, she said. People won't talk to me. Work is treating me like I'm toxic. My own family thinks I went too far. You did go too far, I said. You tried to destroy my career because you wanted a better divorce settlement. That's not just unethical, it's potentially criminal. I wasn't thinking clearly. I was angry. I felt like you weren't listening to me about our problems. So you decided to commit extortion instead of having an honest conversation? She didn't have an answer for that. The divorce is happening, I continued. You can sign the papers and accept the settlement Russell offered, or you can fight it and lose even more. Your choice. She sat there for a long time, staring at nothing. Finally, she spoke. If I sign, what happens? You get your fair share of what we built together. You move on with your life. And hopefully you learn something from this. What about my reputation? That's not my problem. You built that reputation yourself. You maintained it yourself. And you destroyed it yourself. I didn't make you threaten Patricia. I didn't make you stalk her. I didn't make you try to manipulate my colleagues. Those were your choices. She left without saying anything else. 3 days later, her attorney called Russell. She was signing the papers. She'd accept the settlement. It was over. The divorce was finalized 6 weeks later. Quick, clean, and far less expensive than it could have been. She got her share of the assets. I kept my retirement intact. No alimony, no ongoing obligations. The judge reviewed the case file, including all the evidence of her interference with my employment. He made a note in the official record that her actions had been considered in determining the settlement terms. That meant if she ever tried to appeal or claim she'd been treated unfairly, that documentation would follow her. I saw her one last time at the final hearing. She looked smaller somehow, defeated. She signed the papers without making eye contact, then left immediately. Her attorney tried to shake my hand. For what it's worth, your ex made this much harder than it needed to be. I know, I said. As I walked out of that courthouse, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Relief. Freedom. The weight of her manipulation, her schemes, her constant attempts to control and diminish me, all of it was gone. My phone buzzed. It was Kenneth from work. Hey, the team wants to grab drinks Friday to celebrate your promotion. You in? I smiled. Yeah, I'm in. Because that's what happens when you stand up to manipulation. You don't just survive it. You come out stronger on the other side. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I barely recognized my own life. The promotion had opened doors I didn't expect. I was managing a team of 12 people, overseeing regional logistics operations, and actually enjoying the challenge. The raise meant I could afford a better place, start saving properly, and not stress about every expense. But the biggest change wasn't financial. It was mental. For years, I'd been walking around with this low-level anxiety, always wondering if I was good enough, if I was doing enough, if I measured up. My ex-wife had cultivated that feeling deliberately. Every comment about my career, every comparison to her friends' husbands, every suggestion that I was falling behind, it had all been designed to keep me insecure. Now that she was gone, I realized how much energy I'd been wasting on someone who never wanted me to succeed in the first place. Work continued to improve. Kenneth became not just a supervisor, but a mentor. He taught me things about leadership I'd never considered. How to delegate without micromanaging. How to support your team without enabling poor performance. How to handle conflict directly instead of letting it fester. You've got good instincts, he told me one afternoon. You just needed to trust them more. I ran into Bryce Chandler at the coffee machine one morning. He was one of the colleagues my ex-wife had tried to contact on LinkedIn. Can I ask you something? I said. When my ex reached out to you, what did she say? He laughed. She tried to friend me and then immediately started asking questions about workplace morale, whether management was supportive, if there were any concerns about the operations team. It was weird. I gave her nothing and blocked her. I appreciate that. Hey, we look out for each other here. Besides, anyone who goes behind their spouse's back like that, that's not someone you want in your network. The company also followed through on their promise to improve confidentiality protocols. They brought in an outside consultant to review HR practices, implemented mandatory training on privacy and ethics, and created a new reporting system for employees who felt their information had been compromised. I heard through the grapevine that Patricia Brennan had struggled to find work after being terminated. Her violation of confidentiality was now part of her employment record, and HR positions require trust. She'd burned that bridge completely. Part of me felt bad for her. She'd been manipulated too. But she was also an adult who made a choice to violate professional ethics instead of reporting the coercion. Actions have consequences. As for my ex-wife, I heard occasional updates through mutual acquaintances. She'd left the marketing firm after 6 months. The performance improvement plan had been too restrictive, and her damaged reputation made it difficult to work with clients. She found something else eventually, some smaller company outside town. Her social circle had shrunk considerably. Turns out when people realize you're willing to lie and manipulate to get what you want, they stop trusting you with anything meaningful. I ran into her once, completely by accident, at a grocery store. She was alone, looked tired. We made eye contact. She started to say something, then stopped. I nodded politely and kept walking. There was nothing left to say. Russell Tate called me a few months after everything was settled. I wanted to follow up. How are you doing? Better than I expected, I said honestly. The divorce was the right move. It usually is when one party is actively trying to sabotage the other. I've been practicing family law for 20 years. Your case was textbook financial abuse. Most people don't recognize it until it's too late. You acted quickly and protected yourself. That takes guts. I just got tired of being controlled. Smart man. Keep that attitude. It'll serve you well. I started dating again, casually. Nothing serious, just getting back out there. It was strange at first, learning to trust again, learning to be myself without constantly second-guessing every decision. But it got easier. One evening, I was having dinner with a woman named Claire Whitaker. She worked in financial consulting, sharp as they come. We'd been seeing each other for a few weeks. Can I ask you something personal? She said. Sure. You seem cautious. Like you're always watching for the other shoe to drop. What happened? I told her the abbreviated version. The manipulation, the interference with my job, the divorce. She listened carefully. That must have been horrible. It was. But it taught me something important. What's that? That I'm worth more than how someone else chooses to treat me. That my value doesn't come from someone else's validation. And that when people show you who they are through their actions, believe them the first time. Claire smiled. That's a good lesson to learn. Expensive lesson, but worth it. We kept seeing each other. No rush, no pressure, just two people getting to know each other honestly. It was refreshing. A year after the divorce, I got another promotion. Director of Operations, corner office, leadership team meetings, genuine influence over company strategy. The kind of position my ex-wife used to tell me I'd never achieve. Kenneth shook my hand the day it was announced. You earned this. Every bit of it. Thanks for believing in me. I didn't believe in you. I watched you prove yourself. There's a difference. That night, I sat in my living room, beer in hand, looking at the city lights through the window. I thought about where I'd been a year ago, married to someone who wanted to destroy me, anxious about my job, questioning my own competence. Now, I was managing major operations for a successful company. I had genuine friendships with colleagues who respected me. I was dating someone who treated me like an equal. And most importantly, I trusted myself again. My phone buzzed. Text from Claire. Dinner tomorrow? I'm cooking. I smiled and typed back. I'll bring wine. Because that's the thing about manipulation and control. They work until they don't. And when you finally break free, when you finally stand up and refuse to accept less than you deserve, everything changes. My ex-wife tried to make me believe I was failing. She tried to sabotage my career, destroy my reputation, and convince everyone around me that I was incompetent. Instead, she destroyed herself and set me free. And I'd never been more successful in my life. Some people spend years recovering from toxic relationships. I spent years trapped in one. But once I got out, once I saw clearly what had been done to me and chose to fight back, recovery wasn't slow. It was immediate. Because I'd never actually been the problem. She was. And now she was gone. And I was thriving. And that was the best revenge I could have ever asked for. Not hurting her. Not making her suffer. Just succeeding without her. Just being happy. Just being free.